The haftara this week deals with the spies that Yehoshua sent before the Jewish people crossed the Jordan and came to Jericho. So there is a marked contrast between the spies of Yehoshua and the spies of Moshe. First of all, Moshe sent a lot of people, 12 people, and apparently 10 or 11 of them walked in unison all over, which is not really too stealthily. They would be noticed. And they were noticed because he said that the giants saw them and they said, "Who are these grasshoppers? Who are these small creatures?" And the basic difference was that Moshe left them with the impression that whether the Jewish people were going to go to Egypt or, to Eretz Yisrael or not, was dependent on their report. There's room for opinion. You tell us what to do. And Moshe emphasized that there are positive and negative things. Hatov ha'oretz imra. Is it shmeino imroza? So Moshe left it open-ended for them. Not only that, Moshe sent 12 people, so two of them, so to speak, he could trust, Yehoshua and Kalev. But the other 10 were, we never heard of them before, and we never heard of them afterwards. We know who they were. And as I mentioned earlier this week, those probably were not their real names, because we have very strange names there. People are named after a camel. So the entire setup that Moshe arranged was open to the disaster that happened. Because when they came back, they gave their opinion. And they said, this is not for us. We're not going to be able to do it. And to a certain extent, they didn't understand why Moshe is angry at them, or what did they do wrong. They answered the questions that he posed, and they gave their opinion, which led to the disaster of the Dor HaMidbar. Yehoshua, on the other hand, first of all, he only sends 2 people. And the 2 people that he sends are Kalev and Pinchas. So he sends 2 people that he knows are reliable to him, that don't have any negative ideas about Eretz Yisrael. And he leaves no room for their opinion. He tells them, we're going to march across. Your job is to tell us which gate is open, which gate is closed, where the pass through the mountains is. Your job is to give us the intelligence that we need to be able to proceed. But no way does he indicate that their opinion will have any weight on whether they go or they don't go. So in that, he avoids the error that happened before. Now, because Yehoshua himself was one of the spies 38 years earlier, so he is well aware of the pitfalls. He knows what went wrong. and therefore he's able to take steps to prevent it and to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Another significant difference is that Moshe sent them off with a big fanfare. All the whole Jewish encampment was there. It was a whole deal, which is, again, a strange way to engage in spying. And Yehoshua sends them privately. Nobody knows. Meraglim cheresh. No publicity at all regarding their going. And we find many times, the Tanakh points it out to us, that when things become public, when there's publicity involved, so to speak, so then there are a lot of problems. And that's what Chazal said on the Pasuk, V'atznei aleches im Elohecha, to walk with tznius, without the public display. Because many times a public display only covers up the insincerity of what is involved. And we live in a world of media and public, etc. So we see that we are susceptible to all sorts of false narratives and all sorts of aggravation. I mentioned to you a number of times that I no longer read the newspaper. And my eyesight is going some, and I'm much more comfortable. I don't have to, I don't have to know everything, and I don't have to read every. The newspaper is full of evil speech, things that are not necessary. So Yehoshua was aware of that, so he learned the lesson. So he sends Kalev and Pinchas silently. And then the Tanakh records for us that they come to Yericho and that somehow they are spotted. And therefore they are hidden by a woman named Rochav. Hard to know who she was. The Tanakh describes her in an unflattering way. Though there are those that say that description was not true. But in any event, she's the one that hides them. She hides them under straw on the roof so that the searchers will not find them. So it's interesting that they didn't deal with supernatural salvation here. They took every precaution that they should not be caught. They hid under the straw, and then they waited 3 days until the searchers didn't find them, and then they escaped across. They did it all naturally. But Mefarshim point out that this was part of the transition from the Midbar to Eretz Yisrael. The Midbar, everything was supernatural. The moon fell every day. Everything was supernatural. So you didn't have to take any... you make a war, and Moshe raises his hands, Govar Yisrael. Here you're coming to a different situation. You come to a situation where it's not supernatural. And you have to, therefore, adjust. You have to do it like everyone else does. It has to be, so to speak, normal, rational, usual. So therefore, that's how they behaved. They hid. They waited till the searchers came back before they embarked to leave again. and she asks a favor of them. She says, we know that you're going to win the war. Because we heard already what happened to Mitzrayim and Amalek and Og Melech HaBoshan and Sichon, and we know already. We know that eventually you're going to win the war and that you're going to conquer Yericho. But I've done you a favor. So I want you to repay the favor. That my family and I will not be caught up in the war. We'll be spared if Yericho is sacked. And they promise her, but they make a condition that she takes this red string and ties it in the window, and that within that apartment, anybody that's within that apartment will be protected. And we read in Tanakh that that's exactly what happened. In fact, when the walls of Yericho crumbled, she's living in the wall. She and her family survive, and there was a very strange medrash that she even ends up marrying Yehoshua. We don't see that Yehoshua had any children. Not mentioned anywhere in Tanakh that he had any children, that he had any successors. Yehoshua is a very enigmatic figure in Tanakh. He's the Talmud Muvak of Moshe. He's the reflection of Moshe. He's the moon to Moshe's son. And the Tanakh itself says that all the years that Yehoshua lived, the Jewish people behaved themselves because Moshe lived. They lived through Yehoshua. But Yehoshua himself remains very difficult for us to deal with, because the Tanakh doesn't tell us about him. And apparently he had no, the Medrash doesn't say that he had any descendants. So, and he appears as a warrior throughout Tanakh. He appeared that way in the Chumash when he fought Amalek, and he appears this way here in the conquest of Eretz Yisrael. So the entire situation is completely different than the situation of Moshe. And it's that difference that made this situation acceptable and beneficial and good, whereas Moshe's situation turned out to be disastrous. So part of it, the Meforshim say, is because Yehoshua learned from the mistakes of the past. He was not going to repeat that. He was not going to give them room for opinions. He's not going to stress good or bad. None of that. But part of it is also because, as I mentioned, it's the transition of generations and the transition of circumstances. The Dor HaMidbar was the Dor Deya, was the greatest generation. It was the Dor that accepted the Torah, that saw Har Sinai. But it had its downfall. The next Dor, which is less, nevertheless was able to escape those pitfalls, that downfall, and therefore they became the Dor of Boy Oretz, those that came in Eretz Yisrael and were able to settle there. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Omer Ratz HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakar Yisrael Kafil Chachir B'Leim Torah Mitzvah Shenemar Adonai Chavei Tzman Sidko Yagbil Torah V'Yavir.